Right. You guys wanted to dive into those priestly garments, right? The ones from Exodus chapter 28. Well, get ready because we're going to uncover some wild symbolism. We're going deep with this study from My Christian Space. They really get into the meaning behind it all.
It's incredible, isn't it, how God directed every little thing in worship?
I mean, even the clothes.
Yeah. It's like each thread, each stone.
Oh, come on. Now you're getting dramatic.
But it's true. They speak volumes about God, humanity, that whole relationship. It's a visual language, you know?
Okay. All right. I'm listening. I'm ready to learn this language.
Right.
Let's start at the very beginning. Exodus 28.1, right? God chose Aaron and his sons to be priests.
Right.
5 men set apart.
5. That's important, you know? 5 in the Bible, it often symbolizes incompleteness, like a little hint, foreshadowing. Something more complete to come.
You're talking about Jesus, right? The ultimate high priest.
Exactly. But there's more. Look at how the garments were made. Exodus 28.2 and 3. Skilled artisans filled with God's wisdom.
So it wasn't just sewing, it was inspired.
Every stitch. Guided by the Spirit. And then there's the number of pieces. 6 garments. Breastplate, vest, robe, tunic, turban, sash. And 4 materials.
Wait, 6 and 4? Those have meaning too.
Oh, yeah. Think about 6. It often represents human effort, you know? Not enough without God's grace.
Like we need help to even get worship right?
Right. And 4. 4 often represents the world.
Like the whole world needs God's grace.
Woven right into those clothes. It's incredible.
I'm telling you, I never would have caught that. Okay, let's get into the good stuff. The clothes themselves. Vest first, right?
The vest. Exodus 28.6 through 8. Intricately woven, shoulder pieces, decorated belt, both beautiful and functional, just like the priest.
Oh.
But what stands out are those 2 onyx stones on the shoulders, engraved with the names of the 12 tribes.
You know what? Now that you mention it, I always wondered, those stones, they must have been heavy.
A constant reminder, right?
Of who the priest represented. Wow. Gives me chills.
And the word remembrance there. In Exodus 28.112, it's connected to covenants. It's not just remembering. It's like carrying the covenant on his shoulders.
Oh, okay. Another level. And then there's the gold. The squares and chains on the shoulders. Exodus 28.3 and 14.
It must have been a sight to behold. All that detail.
Breathtaking. Okay, what's next? The breastplate, right?
Oh, this is where it gets really good. Exodus 28.15 and 16. The breastplate of justice, a pouch, same materials as the vest, worn right over the heart. And it had 12 stones. Each one for a tribe of Israel.
But wait, isn't there some debate about which stones were actually used?
Oh, absolutely. Exodus 28.17 through 21 lists them, but translating those old Hebrew names, it's tricky. Some scholars even think they might relate to, you know, the stars, astrology, each tribe connected to a constellation or something.
Oh, no, that's interesting. Adds a little mystery.
Right. And then there's the gold chains, the blue cords, all described in Exodus 28.22 through 28, holding it in place over his heart.
Bound to him, literally.
And speaking of a bound, inside that breastplate, the Urim and Thummim.
Oh, yeah. Exodus 28.29 and 30. Divine decision-making tools.
To this day, we don't really know what they were. Stones, tablets. How did God speak through them?
It's a total mystery. We need another deep dive just on that. But for now, we've got to move on. The robe, what about that?
Exodus 28.31 through 35 describes it as being all blue. Blue is important, of course. It's heaven, God's presence.
And it had pomegranates and bells along a hem.
Oh, yeah. Imagine those bells jingling as the priest walks into the holy place.
The sound, the atmosphere.
And it wasn't just for show. Exodus 28.35, it signaled the priest was before God, you know, and prevented death.
Really? Just the sound?
A reminder of holiness, the power of God's presence, sacred space, you know. You have to approach carefully.
Wow. Okay, so we've got the vest, the breastplate, the robe.
Yeah.
What am I missing?
We're not quite done yet. There's still a few more layers to uncover. You said it. We're still digging into these priestly garments from Exodus 28, and there are some fascinating details we haven't even touched on yet.
My mind is already blown, and we're not even done. You've got to tell me more. Those bells on the road, I can practically hear them. It makes you really think about how different worship must have been back then.
Absolutely. And speaking of different, what about Aaron's sons? Did they have a dress code too?
Right. Did they get decked out in all that fancy stuff as well?
Well, maybe not quite as fancy, but they weren't left out. Exodus 28.3941 talks about tunics, sashes, and headgear for them. Still pretty dignified, still an important role serving alongside their father.
It's like a visual hierarchy, right? Everyone in their place serving God.
Exactly. Serving God, no matter what you're doing, it requires something special, something set apart.
Speaking of set apart, there's one garment we haven't talked about yet, and it's a little, well, not quite as glamorous as the rest. Linen shorts.
Yes, the linen shorts. Exodus 28.42-43 describes them. Worn under everything else, from the waist to the thighs. Their purpose was interesting, to say the least.
Okay, I gotta admit, linen shorts aren't exactly what come to mind when I think about high priests and all that golden jewels. What was the point of those?
It's all about modesty and ritual purity.
Yeah.
Remember, we're talking about interacting with the divine, entering the holy place, a sacred space, Every detail had to reflect that.
So even something as simple as covering up was important.
Absolutely. Exodus 28.43 even says that messing up those regulations, including the shorts, could lead to, well, death.
No kidding. That's some serious business.
Yeah.
It really shows you how seriously they took all this.
Imagine that responsibility. One little mistake, and it makes you think about their dedication,
That's mind-blowing. Okay, so we've covered all 6 garments now. The vest, the breastplate, the robe, and even those linen shorts. But what does all this symbolism mean for us today?
That's a great question. We may not be wearing robes and head plates these days, but the principles behind them, those are timeless. Holiness, reverence, approaching God with humility and a pure heart, those are things we can all strive for.
So it's not about the outward appearance, it's about what's inside.
Exactly. It's about our attitudes, the condition of our hearts. That's what truly matters to God.
It's about that inner space, that feeling of awe and reverence, even if we're not in a fancy tabernacle.
Well said. It's about recognizing that we are always in God's presence, no matter where we are or what we're doing.
I'm really starting to see the connections here. Okay, before we wrap up this incredible deep dive, there's one more piece I can't forget. That golden headplate.
Oh, yes. A fitting piece to end on, wouldn't you say? Exodus 28.3638 describes it. Pure gold, inscribed with "Holy to the Lord," worn right on the forehead, attached to the turban with a blue cord.
So not only was he carrying the weight of the people on his shoulders and over his heart, but he was literally wearing holiness on his head.
Such a powerful image, right? It speaks volumes about dedication, surrender to God's purpose.
And Exodus 28.38 says it symbolized the priest's dedication and even made the offerings of the people holy. Amazing.
It really highlights the importance of that role, that connection between the human and the divine.
Seriously, every little detail has so much meaning packed into it.
It's true. And as we move on to our final thoughts, this image of the headplate is a perfect bridge. It challenges us to think about how we can embody that same spirit, Holiness, dedication, surrender.
Yeah.
How do we do that in our own lives?
Can't wait to find out.
Yeah.
The golden headplate, man. He really makes you think, like a walking, talking billboard for holiness. But, okay, all this symbolism is great. But how do we actually apply it today?
That's the big question, right? How do we take those ancient threads and weave them into our modern lives?
I like that, the weaving metaphor. But it's easier said than done. We don't have golden headplates or jewel-encrusted breastplates. So in our world, where it's all about the external, how do we capture that same spirit?
It's a challenge, yeah. And maybe the invitation, too. Those garments,
Yeah.
They were physical, right? But they pointed to something deeper, spiritual realities. And those haven't changed.
So what are garments today, if we don't have a literal one?
Maybe it's not what we wear on our bodies, but what we wear on our hearts. Think about it. Every detail of those priestly garments was intentional, full of meaning. Do we approach our own lives like that? Our actions, our words, our choices, do they reflect holiness?
Wow. That's like we're all called to be artisans of our own lives, crafting each day with that same intention.
Yes. And remember, the priest carried the weight of the people. We're called to do that too, in a way. Carry the weight of the world in our hearts. Compassion, empathy, service.
That's beautiful, but man, it's a lot to carry. It's easy to get lost in our own stuff. How do we stay focused?
Discipline. Remember, the priests had all those rituals, the protocols. We don't have those exact forms, but we can find our own. Prayer, meditation, studying, serving others. Those things connect us to God and to the world around us.
It's like a framework, a structure to help us live out those spiritual realities.
And remember, it wasn't just about individual piety, right? It was about service, mediating between God and the people. So how can we be those bridges today? How do we make God's love visible?
It's about putting faith into action, making it real.
Exactly. That's the real legacy of those garments, I think. Reminding us that faith isn't passive. It's an active engagement with the world.
Man, what a deep dive this has been. History, symbolism, fashion. I feel like we've uncovered some serious truth here.
That's the beauty of it, right? You start with a simple topic and it just unfolds, layers upon layers.
So to everyone listening, keep diving, keep exploring, keep asking the big questions. You never know what you might find.